G'day there guys, once again we're in the Christmas spirit and ready for some r/entitled parents. I know you love Karen around Christmas time and she's back again with her festive bloody antics. So buckle up, get ready for another good episode and enjoy. Our first post is by user Ellie Coraz, titled, Entitled Mum Thinks She's More Deserving Than a Children's Hospital. I live near a children's hospital in the UK, and they do donation drives occasionally to try and get nice things for the kids. My partner and I had just gotten a new video game console, and so our old one was collecting dust. We thought that since it was so close to Christmas, why not donate it? You know, do something nice. So we go to the hospital, having filled out a form telling us when to hand it in, and they're being strict due to COVID. And unfortunately, there was a mix-up with this form. We had filled it in for a different hospital and weren't allowed to queue to hand it in that day due to infection control. A bit annoying, but never mind. We rebook for the next day and turn to leave. Enter entitled mum. She was behind us and waiting for her own form, so she must have heard our discussion. A few seconds later, she followed us out to the car park and called out, "Excuse me, did I hear that you're giving away a console?" Well, yeah, we were going to, but we got a bit mixed up. So, you don't need it anymore? Nah, but we're booked in for tomorrow, so it'll be okay. Why don't you give it to me? I could give it to my son for Christmas. Oh, sorry, but we wanted to give it to the hospital. Do some good, you know? Are you saying this wouldn't be doing good? She raised her voice out of nowhere. No idea what I said to offend her. We've had a horrible year, and this would be amazing for my son. My fiancé, stepping in to help, says, lots of people have had a bad year. We just feel that the hospital is the best place for it. Why? I'm in need too. It isn't fair to give everything to those kids. My son has been good all year, and he deserves it more. It's not a competition. We're giving it to the hospital. Oh, you're so rude. You should give things to people who need them. If they're in hospital, they don't need games. It's a stupid idea. Sorry, like she said, we're booked in for tomorrow. We're going to get to our bus now. At this point, he helped usher me away from her. I'm not great with confrontation, and she kept calling out to us as we left about how her son was more deserving than the kids in the hospital, how it was rude of us to ignore her. It was pretty awful. Sorry if I'm not great at telling the story. And we did go back the next day to very grateful nurses, so it's a happy ending. Merry Christmas to everyone reading. And our next post is by user Once Upon a Decoder, titled, My Parents Never Told Me About My Lactose Intolerance. So basically, as the title says, my parents just never decided to inform me that I was lactose intolerant. As a child, I never liked milk, and cheese and yogurt were always iffy. The pediatrician was always extremely concerned about my calcium intake because I was borderline underweight and kind of brittle. My mum and grandma always fudged the truth with our pediatrician as they were obsessed with the image of being perfect parents. So as I get older, I start noticing that every time I drank chocolate milk, I got horrible heartburn that wouldn't go away with any form of heartburn medicine. It was a running joke that in my family, that I have mutant medicine-resistant heartburn. Now, in my family, you don't go to the doctor unless something is broken or you're dying. Anything else is seen as weakness or as an annoyance, so nothing is done about my mutant heartburn. Eventually, my mum gets annoyed by me constantly complaining about heartburn and gets me Lactaid while dropping, "Oh yeah, you had to be on soy formula because you weren't gaining weight the first few months of your life on normal formula, and CPS was almost called." Cool, love that. Our next post is by user Black-Eyed Panda, titled, Entitled Aunt Tries to Steal My Birthday Present. So I have an entitled aunt who is so evil and toxic, it's unbelievable. I joined Reddit just so I can share her antics. I'm in my 40s, male, so I've got over 3 decades of crazy selfish antics to share. like ruining weddings, ruining holidays, telling kids they're adopted, breaking up relationships, racism, getting people sacked, demanding money. You can't earn more money than her kids, selling stuff that ain't hers, and of course lying with almost every breath. The list goes on. I'll start with one of my earliest memories of her entitled behaviour. First, some light backstory. My aunt, EA, is the eldest. Let's call her Ruth, of 5. Second aunt, who is slightly entitled but manageable, dad and 2 brothers. Except my youngest uncle Kev, the rest worshipped my entitled auntie. They will believe anything that comes out of Ruth's mouth. Or they did, until one by one, they were on the receiving end of her BS. Entitled auntie has 5 kids. She does not discipline her kids. All of them are entitled brats. The sort of kids who constantly fight and shout and cause problems wherever they go. Plus the lying and stealing. Roughly similar ages to me. So, it's the early 90s. It's my 10th birthday, I think. I grew up kinda poor, and I knew my youngest uncle got me a Super Nintendo. This was a huge deal for me. It was my first games console, and I was beyond excited. Party at mine on Saturday morning. So I opened the door for my entitled auntie and her brood at around 10 a.m. Her kids came crashing in, pushing me out of the way as I chatted to my aunt. My lovely cousins went into the living room and started unwrapping my birthday presents. I protested to entitled auntie, but she just said her kids are helping me and how kind her kids are by helping me unwrap. I remember her telling me to get a broom. I remember watching my cousin ripping the box of my SNES and fighting over how to set it up. These animals were fighting, pulling each other's hair, biting one another. I was that skinny, quiet, nerdy kid with glasses, so I just kept my distance. My mum shows her face and shouts why the presents have been opened before the other guests have arrived, especially my youngest uncle's, who was bringing a camcorder. Entitled auntie told my mum that I just went crazy with excitement and ripped everything. Also that I hit one of her kids and he was wailing in the corner. Obviously my mum knows how I behave, but entitled auntie is a master manipulator and told my mum I go crazy and show off in front of my cousins. I tried to tell my mum the truth, but entitled auntie cut in with, "Let's call your dad about your lying." Even at that age, I knew my dad would believe entitled auntie. So I was put on timeout by my mum because entitled auntie suggested it. I sat in the corner silently crying whilst watching my cousins fight over my presents. I remember entitled auntie telling my dad what a rude host I was, how I was hitting my cousins and not listening. To my horror, my dad tells me to face the wall and that he didn't raise me like that. Uncle Kev turns up about 20 minutes later and goes ballistic as to why I'm on timeout on my own birthday. I loved my youngest uncle. There's a reason why he's my favorite. He was cool, he was about 20, he had tattoos, and he gave no Fs, and best of all, even entitled auntie knew not to cross him. I remember Kev handing out backhands to my spoiled cousins to get them to stop fighting and to shut up. I remember his hug and him sitting down and playing Mario with me. The best 10 minutes of my birthday. That 10 minutes made up for the rest of that crappy day. Uncle Kev had to leave soon and things went shitty again. I had the control pad ripped from my hands not too long after, so I pretty much just sat and watched. The adults were in the other room most of the day, and entitled auntie would come to watch us like a hawk every now and then. Obviously, she would always ask me to do something like, "Go get cousin 2 a drink," or "Cousin 3 can't find your bike. Go get it out for him." Also stuff like, "What moisturizer does your mum use? What does she put in her hair? How much was that dress?" etc. This bit may not have happened on this day, but my entitled auntie would always ask me questions about my mum's products and other similar stuff that I had no idea about or understood. About an hour later, entitled auntie announced it's time to leave. I see my 12-year-old cousin packing away the games console and holding it like it was his. I heard him ask his mum if he can take it. I tried to take it from him, but I had no chance. I told Entitled Auntie that he's taking my game. And Entitled Auntie tells me that my dear cousin is only borrowing it, and that I was such a bad host, and how her children got slapped because of my lies. I ran and told my mum. Then I ran to the front door to stop anyone from leaving till I got my game back. My mum came to the rescue this time. She just calmly took the SNES from my aunt, who had it tucked under her arm by this point. I should add that my cousins break things almost instantly. They had already broken their Sega. Entitled Auntie was saying how I said that my cousins could borrow it, how she didn't see me play the damn thing, and obviously I didn't like it. That Uncle Kev got it for all his nephews to share, blah blah blah. I see my dad coming, and I just grabbed the box from my mum, ran to my room, and hid it. I can't remember the rest of the day. I remember my dad later telling me off for getting my cousins into trouble, and how rude I was to my aunt. That's one of my earliest memories of my aunt's antics. Should add that this event won't even make it into her top 30 worst antics. Fast forward 30 years, and everyone's kind of sick of Entitled Auntie's antics, including my dad. Everyone except her kids. We are all civil, but we keep our distance. I'll be sure to write more about Crazy Ruth, and my blood's boiling just thinking about the things she's said and done over the years. Quick little story. After our Uncle Kev turned up and gained control, he did indeed pull out his camcorder. The footage starts with me playing Mario for the first time, and then it pans around to show my cousins all sat around with tears in their eyes, and Kev narrating, "These are the worst kids he's ever witnessed." Then shows my Entitled Auntie's thunder face. I last saw this clip around 2002 in Uncle Kev's house. He had it made into DVD with other funny family clips. Our entire extended family would laugh at that clip. That DVD mysteriously disappeared after Entitled Auntie's family visited one Christmas. That sounds like a terrible auntie. I would be so embarrassed to have her as my mom, Jesus Christ. And our next post is by user friedbread_. Titled, Entitled Mum thinks that her son is innocent from a crime just because he's done so good at school. So my partner and I had to go around to a house and bring a 19-year-old into the station for questioning about a case of assault and vandalism from the night before. As I expected, his parents were there and wondering why 2 police officers were at their door. They let us in, and we informed them that their son had been caught fighting someone and throwing a rock at a window, smashing it. Then the son walks into the room, and the mum asks, "Did you hit someone last night?" The son says no, and apparently to the mum that was concrete evidence to prove his innocence. We tell them that the person in the nightclub had remembered reading his identity, and he was seen by multiple people. Still, his mum tried to prove his innocence, and here's how the conversation went. She says, "My boy would never do anything like this. Do you know how well he's done at school? His grades are probably double as good as yours." And I reply, "We need to bring him to the station for questioning. You can come down too." And she replies, "My boy has been framed, you know. You'll see. I know Tom," which was not his real name, of course, "better than anyone, and you won't ruin my innocent boy's future." Then the dad says, "Look, surely you can, let him off with a warning or something. He's a good kid at school, you know." The argument went on a bit further, but in the end we arrested him and took him to the station after a hurl of insults, such as pigs, criminals, bullies, all the things I've heard before. So here's a note. Just because your kid has straight A's doesn't mean he can break the law. But if you have over 2 brain cells, you'll know that. Laughing emoji. Our next post is by user Depressed Popoto, titled, "My entitled mom made me think that I was BFFs with a victim of a school shooting." That's a yikes from me, chief. So when I was in high school, it was around the start of the school shootings here in the States. It was about a year before Columbine, and I grew up in Eastern Oregon. The only ties we had to the western side of the state was my grandparents, aunts, uncle, and cousins. The shootings happened at the high school in Springfield, Oregon, and my mum sat there and told lie after lie to me and people around me that I was friends as a child with one of the victims of the shooting. After about a week of her attention-seeking BS, I called her out on it, and I remember her saying it was to make me remember to pray for families. Edit: my mum is very screwed up. She lied a lot when I was younger to draw attention to herself. Even as an adult, she did things that I have insane stories that are short and unbelievable. Edit: so there are a lot of questions to answer that I can't keep up with. So my mum had me really looped into her BS for a long time as a kid and into my teen years. When this happened, I had realized after a week of, oh my god, I had no idea who this person was and why am I crying over this person I barely know. After all of that, I stopped believing every line of BS my mum fed me. This is pretty much the life you live with an either entitled or a toxic parent. Also, yes, I do realize that this was not Springfield but Thurston now. My mum had a lot of lies that she liked to tell people or me to get attention, and she still does to this day. My sisters and I now believe that this is just part of an underlying mental illness. It's personally sad to see. And our last story is by user Dejera123. My mother, entitled mother, forced me to go outside. I had that plague thing we have. Context: I, 13 male, was diagnosed with the big plague. Nothing life-threatening and I recovered successfully, but I still could have spread it. This event happened when I still had the plague and my 14 days still weren't over. This story also happened October 2020, so I forgot some details and what I said may not be entirely correct, so now to the story. Now, one day when I was having breakfast in my room alone, my father cracked the door open and said that I'm going outside today, and I gave him this confused, puzzled look. I brushed it off, thinking that it was just a dumb joke and that I'm not actually going outside. A few hours later, my mother entered my room saying that we're going outside. I told her that I don't think it's safe because I still had that big plague boy, and that I could spread it, and that I'm pretty sure that it's illegal. But my mother brushed it off, saying nothing bad will happen. My mother gave me a hoodie, knitted gloves, shoes, a scarf, and a jacket. She told me to put them on and tell me that I'm going outside. I still protested it, saying that I could infect someone, but she still brushed it off and said that I'm refusing to go outside because I'm addicted to the internet. I finally got tired of her, so I decided to go outside with her, but I said if anything goes wrong, it's all my parents' fault. When I got outside, I felt nothing but how cold outside was. I yet again told her that it isn't a good idea, but she still said that I need fresh air. I thought that we were going to take a trip around the block or just a short trip, but my mother planned to go to this place with a bunch of restaurants and a small shop that's around 1.5 kilometers away. We had to go through 2 parks, one being a very popular and massive one where people usually walk their pets and go around jogging. I only heard how long we are actually going to travel when we were already in the middle of the popular park. I immediately told her that we're going back and that I was tired and that my legs hurt, and she was surprised and shocked that I'm tired, even though one symptom of this big plague boy is tiredness. Oh, shocking that! So we started to head back home until I said that my legs hurt so bad that I can barely walk. She told me that we could maybe just take the bus back home, and I gave her the most blank stare ever, and she replied that it was a bad idea to go on the bus and that this was a super bad idea. When I came back home, I just fudging jumped on my bed and spent the next hour with a headache and a cold. The worst thing about this story is that my mother has a degree in medicine and works in a clinic, yet she still thought this was a good idea. And, well, I did infect someone, that person being my mother. She was barely like 75 centimeters away from me and was holding my hand the entire time, even though I tried to get her hand off. She said it's okay because I wore knitted gloves. Knitted gloves have the same problem as knitted masks. They are useless because the plagues are small enough to go through the knitted gloves or something like that, I'm not sure. I have more stories about my parents, one being also related to the big plague boy, but this one is the dumbest and stupidest, I guess, of them all. I might post more soon if you guys think I should. And that's where I'm going to end today's episode, guys. I do hope you enjoyed this, Markee Entitled Parents reading. If you did, please give me a shout down in the comments, tell me what you think of it, and I hope you're having a good day, night, sleep, whatever you're up to, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.